What's goody? Hey man, it is about that time of the season. The season is almost over, so we are here doing my 2025 finals preview and prediction. I'm recording this on Wednesday, but as y'all, let me lock it in. I'm recording this on Wednesday, but y'all are seeing this on Thursday before the finals tip off. And I'm going to tell you right now, it is more than likely you won't see a video after this one for at least a few days. Now, if my fiance happens to give birth soon, you know what I'm saying? If she happens to have a shorter labor, then it probably won't be too long. It'll probably be like after game two of the finals. But if not, it could be like game three, game four. Like, I don't know, because it also depends on how things are at home with the baby and how tired I am, how tired we are, and how much everything, just how everything goes. This is both of our first baby, so yeah. But anyways, let's lock it in. Let's talk about these finals. So I haven't really watched too many other people's like predictions or anything about this finals. I've watched like a few people just kind of have like their initial thoughts, but I haven't actually watched anybody's full prediction video because I didn't want to like copy anything or anything like that. But from everything that I was hearing before this series started, most people believe that this is going to be a convincing series win for OKC. But I, for one, wouldn't be shocked if Indiana gives OKC a fair amount of trouble. Now, I don't believe Indiana is going to win this series, but I do believe that Indiana is going to be a tougher matchup for Oklahoma City than a lot of people realize or than a lot of people think they could be. And now, while I do think there are some key players, like guys like Andrew Nembhard, I think are going to have phenomenal series. I think guys like Miles Turner offensively are going to have to do some damage in this series in order for these things to happen. But I don't think that it is at all out of the realm of possibility. In fact, I believe it will. What will happen is that the Indiana Pacers will take at least two games in this series because I think the Indiana Pacers are a good team and a tested team. And offenses like the Indiana's, right, where you have a team-oriented offense and you have a guy at the helm that can literally control the ball, isn't going to be a turnover machine, right? He controls everything and can also score. And when he scores, I think like 20 plus in the playoffs, they're undefeated or something like that, right? An offense like that is tougher to guard than an offense that relies heavily on one guy, especially when that guy is more of an isolation scorer. Now, with Shea, it's different because Shea's not like a James Harden where he's relying on isolation buckets to get him, but like their threes or whatever, or like their outside shots where you might just have a day where those shots aren't falling. For him, it's a lot of getting to the basket, getting to the free throw line, getting to that mid-range area, just kind of picking and choosing his spots. He's not going to be a guy that's taking 5 to 6 step back threes a game, taking 8 to 9 threes a game. So while that does make this type of offense less hard to guard, or I mean harder to guard than like a James Harden oriented offense when he was with Houston or whatever, even though James Harden was a better scorer, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, it's just like the way that Shea gets his buckets makes this team harder to guard than like a James Harden oriented offense, and some of that is also just the pieces he has around him, right? Like, he has a very capable number two and a very capable like 2B guy in Chet and J-Dub, right? But I will still say that Indiana's offense is the harder offense to guard. Now, we saw the Pacers have some success defensively against a heavy ISO guy in Brunson. We saw Andrew Nembhard in some possessions and some spurts have success on Jalen Brunson. We saw the same thing on Donovan Mitchell. We've seen him make life tough on these guards in the playoffs, especially some of these more ball dominant pure scorer type of guards like Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell. We've seen Nembhard have success with that. And I think in this series it's going to probably have to be a lot of Nesmith just because of his size, but I do think that depends a lot on his ankle and everything like that. But we've seen this team have some success defensively against those type of guys, and I do think that could translate at least a little bit in this series. Like I said, it's a little different because while Shea and Brunson both get to the line at a very high clip, it's a very different thing with Shea, especially because Shea is so good at just like drawing into that contact, and he's so good at exaggerating the contact. But then the thing is, he also just slashes so many times a game, and because he's stronger, he's bigger than Brunson. He's not going to take the wear and tear on his body as much as Brunson is, so that makes him much more of a relentless type of slasher. But I do think that the defensive success that we've seen them have, at least in spurts, especially when it's Nembhard and Nesmith, they've had success in spurts against these type of guys. I do believe that can translate some here, and I do believe that in certain games of this series, certain stretches of this series, when guys like J-Dub and Chet might not be scoring as well, I do think that Indiana's defense will be able to key in a little bit on Shea for, like I said, for spurts, for maybe even a full game or two in this series. And I think I'm not one of those people that buys into the whole, this finals is going to be a snooze fest. Who's going to watch these finals? The ratings, blah, 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 blah. First of all, I don't really give a damn about the ratings, and I don't think the NBA cares that much about the ratings either. And both of these teams have had the top the records in the league since January 1st in their conferences. Like it's since the turn of the calendar year, these have been the two best teams record-wise in basketball. And I think the two stylistic things, the two schemes are very different enough to where it's OKC is the dominating defense that has an ISO heavy point guard at the helm, where Indiana is the steamrolling offense that is led by a playmaking, facilitating floor general point guard that it can score his own, but also is not going to make mistakes as often as some of the other guards that they've seen in this series, whether it be a Jamal Murray or whether it be an Anthony Edwards or whoever it may be, or a Ja Morant. He's not going to make some of the turnover mistakes that other teams, that just other guys have made, especially with him having the ball in his hands a lot in terms of initiating the offense in the half court. Him and Pascal, I don't think, are going to make some of the mistakes that, like, you're not going to be able to get some of the turnovers that you were able to get on Julius Randle. You're not going to be able to get some of the turnovers that you might have been able to get on Jaren Jackson. You know what I'm saying? So, and another thing about this series is that both teams have very, very good deep benches. You know what I'm saying? So this is a series where we could see not so much a war of attrition, but it'll kind of be more of, okay, which bench is playing better, right? Because if you have Indiana, where if you have Benedict Mathurin playing the way he played in the last couple of games versus New York, and you have TJ McConnell hooping, and if you have whatever big they decide to play off the bench, whether it be Thomas Bryant or Tony Bradley, who both could get minutes in the series because of OKC's size, there are benches on both sides that are very, very capable. I didn't even mention Obi Toppin, who I completely forgot about. But then on the other side, you got Cason Wallace, the young defensive stud. Aaron Wiggins, a guy who, if he goes off for 20 in one of these games, OKC's probably winning that game. You got an Isaiah Joe who can shoot the lights out of the gym, and Indiana's not a great enough defense. Or let me put it like this: Indiana doesn't have, like, Isaiah Joe can hide a little bit on Indiana. Like, you can put him on Nembhard for a couple minutes or Nesmith for a couple minutes, and you can be like, okay, we trust you to not get 20 put on you in 12 minutes when you're on the court. We trust that because we don't trust those guys as the pure scorers that some of these other teams have had, the way he wasn't able to play in some of these other series earlier in the playoffs. And then you have guys like Alex Caruso, who is one of the best defensive players in the league, and if Lou Dort's not playing well, he comes in and immediately replaces those minutes. You got bigs like Kenny Hustle and Jalen Williams, Jay Will, who are going to come in and probably give you some big minutes here, especially if Tony Bradley and Thomas Bryant get some significant minutes off the bench in this series. So for all of those reasons, I'm actually very excited about this finals, and I don't buy into that whole this is going to be a snooze fest of a finals thing. I just don't buy into that. There are a few things, though, that I think OKC has a huge advantage in this game. The massive one that we already talked about a little bit. Indiana has some nagging injuries, mostly that ankle injury of Nesmith, whereas OKC has no injuries that I can think of off the top of my head. No injuries that I think about that have even been listed on an injury report in weeks and months. You know what I'm saying? Like, while both teams are relatively healthy, OKC is the healthier team. I don't know if I might have said Indiana on accident, but while both teams are pretty healthy, both teams have gotten here without having a major injury or anything like that, OKC is the healthier team, and that is something that is going to be interesting in a team in a series like this where both teams have depth, because you wonder how much of that is really going to matter because of the depth of both teams. But another thing that I think is going to be huge, OKC has a bit more rest. OKC got out of their series in 5 games, and while they did go to a Game 7 in the second round, it was like sweep Game 7, it's 5 games. You know what I'm saying? Whereas Indiana, they've had in the first round, it was an easy one against the Bucks, but then it was 6 against New York in this last round, and against Cleveland, it was just 5. So I guess both teams are pretty well rested. But coming off of this most recent round, OKC has the better rest. Indiana had their flight delayed or whatever because of a tornado warning that was in Oklahoma, and St. Louis just got hit by a tornado today as I speak. So prayers out to all of y'all if any of y'all got affected by this. You know, I'm from St. Louis, so I got family all throughout there, but everyone's good on my end, thank God. But yeah, so those are things that give OKC an advantage. Another huge thing that's going to OKC's advantage in this series is that no guard has really had success against them in these playoffs. Jamal Murray struggled, and while Tyrese Halliburton's better than Jamal Murray, he still struggled. Anthony Edwards struggled for the most part in this series. Wasn't even getting a lot of the shots in some of those losses that they had in this series, where you're looking at him and he's taking 11 shots or 13 shots or whatever it was he took in Game 1 and Game 5, where it's just Game 1 and Game 4, where it's just he wasn't even able to be aggressive the way he wants to be aggressive because of the way they were cutting off the paint so much and the way they were just guarding him and throwing bodies at him. And it was the same thing with Ja Morant. Ja Morant was having that one good game, and I think it was Game 3 before he got hurt, where they kind of they had a big lead on OKC. They were up 30, but then it's you don't know how much of that's real because it was only that one stretch of a game where he was really playing well and everything like that. Now, Grizzlies fans are saying, oh, we had him figured out, but you know what I'm saying? How real is that? But what I will say here, a lot of OKC's offensive production is based on how they play in transition because of their turnovers. So points off of turnovers are massive for OKC's offense, and it's especially when they're like at the home, whether they be home or away. But I think it's especially important in the home when they're playing at home. You'll see they'll have times where their offense will just go stagnant a little bit, and then they get a turnover from Alex, and then Alex Caruso checks in the game that he forces a turnover or two. Lou Dort forces a turnover. J-Dub will get in there and force a turnover. Shea will get in there and force a turnover. Chet might get a block or something. And they'll run in transition and they'll score. And against a team like Indiana where they don't turn the ball over a ton, I just don't know how successful and how much they can really rely on that strategy and how much they can rely on that facet of their game offensively and defensively. Now, I think there's still a world where they're going to be able to get a solid amount of turnovers and everything like that because their defense is just that historically great. But at the same time, I do trust in Halliburton more than any other guard they faced when it comes to taking care of the basketball, protecting the basketball. And another thing that I think is really, really worrying for Indiana here that I didn't even think about to mention in my notes, Indiana's players, especially Halliburton, but just the team in general, they have shot and played so much worse at home on average throughout these playoffs that if you go into OKC and you're struggling to win in OKC because it's a tough place to win, they're all going to be wearing the shirts and everything like that. It's going to be tough for you to come home and play worse than you play on the road. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be tough for you to win a game at home if you go into OKC and you can't do anything and then you come home and that trend continues where you're playing worse at home than you've been playing on the road, which is not something that's normal. It's not something that we normally see in the playoffs, especially from a team that makes it to the finals. So I think there's a ton of things that are really interesting about this series. With all that being said, I'm going to pick OKC to take it in 6. While I could see them taking it in 5, I could see this being, you know what I'm saying, anything like that. I could see this being a quick series. I could see this going 7. I think it's much more likely that we'll see this one end in 5 than it is that we'll see this one end at 7, but I'm picking it to end in 6. Either way, it's a great finals. It's good to see two small market teams in the finals. It's good to see two small market teams make it this far and everything like that, especially when they have such a great fan bases like Indiana and OKC do. But yeah, man, so I'm just excited to I'm looking forward to this final starting tomorrow or tonight as y'all are watching this video. But yeah, let me know what y'all thoughts are. Let me know what y'all are thinking about in the series. Let me know if y'all think I didn't analyze something correctly, if you think I was completely wrong, or if you think I just missed something or overlooked something that I didn't even talk about at all or didn't talk about enough. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for watching as always. God loves you and so do I. All right, peace out.